Today I'll talk about 7 mistakes that I see people do when they're doing landscape photography. And these mistakes usually happen during my workshops. That is the place where I notice those mistakes, because in all the other moments I'm just going by myself in the forest, which a lot of people tell me it's not okay because there could be bears. Well, hey everyone, my name is Soma, Phototom here on YouTube, and this channel is all about landscape photography. So if you're interested in this kind of topics, make sure to subscribe for more similar videos. Also, if you want to learn photography with me, you can join me for one of my workshops. I have Tuscany in May of 2022. I have the Dolomites in September, and then I have a forest photography workshop. You can also support me by buying one of my courses, or maybe an ebook that I wrote about landscape photography. All these details are on my website. The link is in the description of this video. I'll start with the biggest mistake that I'm noticing, and that is the lack of a proper subject. This is something that I see so often that I think it could have been on another spot than number one. The number one mistake that I see is the photo that is technically correct and that is expressing nothing. I can't say if there is one subject or multiple subjects. I don't know exactly what the photographer wanted to do. Now, to illustrate this, I will show you some photos, and I'll start with this one, for example, which is okay exposed. It's a photo of the entire valley. If you're looking at, we have a foreground element in the shape of this tree over here, and then we have the valley, but I don't have a clear subject. In landscape photography, when you're thinking of creating a compelling image, think about simplicity. Choose one subject and create a composition that supports that subject. I mean, it's a very simple recipe. Now let's move to this one, for example. Again, we have the valley, but we also have this yellow house over there, and we have these elements over here. So maybe the photo would have looked a lot more interesting if the composition would have been something like this. So now it's a much more clear way that the viewer is looking at. Let's move to this next photo. This is, for example, this photo, it's about completely nothing. I mean, I can't create a crop from this photo and create something interesting. Over here we have a beautiful green valley, but again, I don't know what's the subject. This is more of a snapshot. I mean, this photo could have been reframed in a way like, let's say like this, with a longer telephoto, and make the photo, for example, about this mountain, or maybe, let's say, maybe would have been about these houses in the valley, or another moment or another place in the valley. But again, choose something and stick with it. Over here, that's a photo from Tuscany. It's a simple field with some haystacks, and that's it. The city in the distance, it's too small to be noticed. So again, it's a photo that it's correctly executed. It's sharp. It's well exposed. It preserves the highlights and the blacks, but I can't point my finger on a clear subject. This photo had a little more potential than the others. The only thing that would have made this photo good would have been to wait for the light to shift a little bit and highlight those small cottages over there. The second mistake I see that is happening a lot is this idea that every landscape photo should have a foreground element. And that is why a lot of photographers, when they come to my workshops, they're working so hard to find a foreground element to include in their photos. And if they don't find something interesting, they go ahead and include a foreground element, even if it's not interesting. When there is not a good foreground element in front of you, you should change your approach, and you should try and skip this mental state that, oh, I have to find the foreground element, I have to find the foreground, oh, there is no foreground element, okay, let's photograph this crappy foreground element. So in this photo, you have a really crappy foreground. You have lots of elements that should not be here, and you also have these pine trees. Even though they're covered in frost, they're blocking the view towards the background, that it's more interesting. Let's move to this one. Over here we have a foreground that could have been interesting, but it's not. It's not. It could have been interesting because when you have these shapes in the snow, you can do something with them, but it's not the most fortunate choice of shapes in the snow in the case of this photo. Over here again, I'm having nothing basically. The whole photo is over here, and I'm just including elements that are not interesting in my photo. I could have used that tree. That tree, it's not a big problem to have that tree, but probably would have been better if I would have walked over here. Let me just draw myself. I'm not a good drawer with the mouse button, but that's me, the red man. And from here, I think the view would have been a lot more interesting. Next, in this photo, I had a really beautiful light, but I included all these crappy bushes in front of me. And the thing that I should have done would be to concentrate over here. But now I'm lacking resolution because I did an extreme cropping. And this photo over here, again, there is nothing interesting in the foreground. It's just some yellow grass, a little bit of snow, a little bit of stone. Yeah, it's like a song. A little bit of yellow grass, a little bit of snow, a little bit of stone, and nothing in the foreground. And this photo over here, where I'm having an uninteresting foreground element that leads to nothing. There is no subject, there is no nothing. It's a simple, it's like I'm walking with my phone in my hand and I accidentally go snap. That's one of the baddest snapshots that you could get. Mistake number 3 is to place your subject too close to the edges of the photo. And why this is a mistake? Because at that moment, the edges of the photo almost become lines in a composition. The attention is so focused only or directly on the subject, because you have the subject and you have a strong vertical and a strong horizontal line near the subject, and the attention of the viewer goes directly in that place, and you lose the rest of the photo. There is no reason for you to have a composition in the photo, because the attention will go over there, and that's not a good thing. It's like when you're drawing and you're drawing in the corner of the paper, and the teacher said use the entire surface of the paper. So I will show you some photos. This one over here, where I have this house too close to these to the right side of the photo. this one, where I have the tree too close to the upper left side of the photo. So this mistake, I think it appears because people are trying to apply the rule of thirds, but they are going overboard with it. So don't go overboard with it. And this one over here, that could have been a really interesting and a really good photo. The house is too far to the left and too close to the bottom edge of the photo. Mistake number 4 is including elements that compete with your subject. This is happening because you're not fully aware of what your subject is. Because if in your mind you say, okay, that's my point of interest, then it's impossible for you to have other elements in the shot that will compete with your point of focus. Because if you look at your photo, say, what is my point of focus? That's my point of focus. So why have I included this really bright area that competes with my point of focus? Now, let me show you some photos. This one over here. Well, in this photo over here, the main distraction comes from this area of the water where you see a reflection of the sky. The sky, it's not the one that bothers me the most, because you can go and apply a camera raw filter on this photo, and you can simply go with the gradient filter and just take the brightness of the sky a little bit down. And after that, I forgot to do something. And after that, because the point of interest is the chalet on the water, you can simply add a gradient filter over there and just increase the exposure a little bit. And now the attention is more focused on the chalet, but you still have this puddle over here. So a solution would have been to move a little bit and to change the framing so that you have only the chalet and the sky in the photo. Another solution would have been to eliminate the sky completely, and you're having a photo that now you know for sure that the chalet is the point of focus. Now in this photo over here, I photographed the church, but I also included these elements, these houses that have really bright roofs. So there are two ways to fix this. You can go with the heel brush and simply remove those houses. I mean, yeah, I know people are not having houses right now in my virtual world, but it's the sacrifice you need to make in order for me to have a really beautiful photo. And probably I will go even to extreme and remove this house also. Yeah. I don't know what, maybe it was the bishop's house. Now he has a place to live, but I'm not interesting. It's everything for a good photo. Let's take a look at another image. Yeah, that's one of my favorite photos. This cable railway doesn't exist anymore. So what is happening here? The people are looking at this element because it's really close to the camera, but they are also looking to these two elements because they're yellow and they're a lot brighter. So the framing should have been something like this. Mistake number 5 is to wrongly use the circular polarizer. So there are two ways of using the circular polarizer wrong. The first way is to make the sky completely black. And that is, maybe it would be okay if you're aiming for black and white photos and Now we have a really dark sky, and maybe this works in your favor. But the second mistake, which is a lot more obvious, is when you're using really wide focal lengths, like 17 millimeter, 24 millimeter. The lens is so wide that it captures an area of the sky that is affected by the circular polarizer, and then an area of the sky that is not affected of the circular polarizer. The circular polarizer works okay when you have the sun to your 90 degrees to your right or to your left. Okay, it doesn't matter, but it has, you look this way and you have the sun to this area or this area. But when the lens is capturing so much in front of you, it starts to go near the sun, and those areas are not being polarized, and this looks really strange. Like, for example, in this photo over here, where you see I only see the effect of the polarizer above these mountains. Or in this photo, I have the effect of the polarizer in one corner of the image. Or over here, like it looks like a blob, like a sphere of darkness that comes down from the sky. It looks bad. Don't do it. It's better to do 2 exposures, or maybe use a gradient filter to do that. But it looks so bad. These photos are, I mean, I can't post these photos. These are really bad. Don't do this mistake. Mistake number 6 is people they're either not using the histogram to check if their photos are okay exposed, or they're not understanding what the histogram is. So my advice is to have the histogram set to see the 3 color channels, red, green, and blue, and not the gray version, which is an average of these 3 channels. The reason for that is because before the sunrise and after the sunset, so when there is no sunlight in the sky, the blue channel can get overexposed. The blue channel goes strongly to the right. After the sun is rising, during the sunrise, during sunset, the red channel gets overexposed. So you may have the red channel overexposed, but the gray version of the histogram shows you that everything is okay because it's an average of the 3 channels. And finally, mistake number 7. People keep asking, because they are hearing different versions, what is the correct way to photograph? To photograph underexposed or overexposed? And for me, that's the wrong question. And let me explain why this is the wrong question. If you choose your subject, and your subject is the most brightest element in front of you, because if you're choosing a subject that's in the shadow, then it's very difficult to make it a subject. You need to have light on your subject, okay? So the subject is really bright, you have light on the subject, and then you don't include elements that compete with your subject. So you're trying to find a framing that will emphasize the subject, that will support the subject. So you have light on the subject, and the other elements of the photo are not having the same brightness. They're having lower values of brightness. Well, at that point, you're going to expose for the subject. And guess what will happen to the rest of the photo? It will look underexposed. It will look darker. But it's not because I'm underexposing the photo, but it's because I'm exposing correctly for the subject. You may think that people are overexposing or underexposing. Well, I think this is a wrong. You can troll me for this thing that I'm going to say right now. It's a beginner mistake. Choose your subjects wisely, and of course the rest of the photo will be underexposed. Let me show you some photos of mine. So this is a photo. I really like the light, the way the peaks were highlighted over there, were the way the light was shining behind those peaks and made those silhouettes interesting. Over here, I was at Bled Lake, and I liked the silhouette of the island and that small church or castle. I forgot what's in the middle of the lake. It's a building with a tower. So I was really aiming for having a silhouette of the tower, and of course the rest of the image was darker. This one over here inside a town, I was photographing from darkness towards light, and of course that the rest of the photo looks underexposed because I'm choosing my composition wisely. I'm choosing the point of focus into the light, and then I'm retreating into the darkness to have an interesting image. This one over here, it may look like it's underexposed, but actually it was a stormy day, and then we had a break in the clouds, and the light was shining directly on those on the house and on the small chapel. Over here, I was in the Dolomites, and again we had some clouds, some rainy clouds, and some dramatic light on the mountains. Here at Seceda, this is done during the day. We had dramatic clouds, the light falls into the background, and I'm just increasing the contrast a little bit on this photo, and I'm getting this kind of a contrast. Over here, this is in Slovenia, and I really liked the mist that was rising from the mountains and how the light was shining in that mist. Of course, I exposed for those highlights, and I simply captured this image where we have the pine trees in silhouette, but it's enough. You see them and you know those are pine trees, and you have the mountain. Over here we have a sunrise in Tuscany, and I'm paying attention how the light sculpts the landscape, and I really like photographing in a moment where I have some areas into the light and some areas in shadows, and that's the same. It's the same with this photo over here, where I intentionally photograph it in a moment where I don't have light on the entire surface of the photo. I have light on the area of the photo that I really like, and then I have a little bit of shadow on the rest of the area. Over here, it was the sunset that was happening in the Dolomites. We were photographing towards Trecime di Lavaredo, and I waited and waited until the sun went down, and then I photographed only the top of the peaks. I hope these 7 mistakes will be useful to you, and you will not make them. Again, if you want to learn photography with me, you can join me for one of my workshops. You can purchase one of my editing courses or my ebook on landscape photography. If you have questions, use the comment section below. If you have something to add, another mistake to add, again, use the comment section below. And until next time, keep on photographing, because it's the only way that you can get better. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.